One of the most curious misunderstandings of modern life is the belief that power must announce itself loudly. We imagine strength as something tense, aggressive, visibly armed with opinions and certainty, as though authority only exists when it raises its voice. From an early age, we are trained to associate confidence with dominance and volume, mistaking noise for substance. Yet if you watch nature closely, and I love to point this out with gentle amusement, you'll notice that the most potent forces are rarely noisy. Water does not shout, argue, or demand recognition, yet over time it shapes mountains, carves canyons, and alters landscapes in ways no explosion ever could. The calm person understands this instinctively, not as an idea, but as a lived truth. They have discovered that stillness is not weakness, it is a form of intelligence that does not rush to prove itself. To look harmless is not to be harmless, it is to be free from the exhausting need to signal importance. This freedom creates a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on intimidation, applause, or validation. It simply exists, steady and unshakable. We are taught, almost from childhood, to perform our importance. Speak up quickly, defend your position immediately. Show people where you stand before they question your worth. This conditioning turns life into a constant performance, where silence is mistaken for inadequacy and restraint is seen as surrender. But this performance creates tension, and tension is always a sign of fear of being ignored, misunderstood, or diminished. The calm person has stepped out of this exhausting theater entirely. They no longer wrestle with the world to assert their existence or argue their relevance. In doing so, they become strangely unpredictable, because they are not reacting out of habit, they are responding with awareness. A reactive world expects instant emotional responses, rehearsed outrage, or visible resistance. When none of that appears, confusion sets in. Nothing unsettles a reactive environment more than someone who refuses to be emotionally dragged into its frenzy. Calmness disrupts the script. It removes the expected cues. And without those cues, the machinery of conflict simply doesn't know how to operate. I may say that calmness is dangerous precisely because it cannot be controlled. You cannot manipulate a person who does not need your approval, nor can you threaten someone who is no longer invested in defending an image. Provocation relies on hooks, ego, insecurity, pride, and the calm person offers none of these. When anger is expected and calm appears instead, the entire script collapses. The strategy fails before it even begins. Calm people look harmless because they don't brandish emotional weapons. They don't sharpen their words to wound or inflate their presence to dominate. But beneath that softness lies clarity, and clarity cuts deeper than rage ever could. Rage blinds, but clarity sees. It understands what matters and, more importantly, what doesn't. This is why calmness feels unsettling to those who thrive on emotional chaos. It exposes the futility of manipulation. It reveals how much power others give away simply by needing reactions. Calmness withdraws that currency entirely. The art of looking harmless is not about deception, it is about non-attachment. It emerges naturally when you are no longer clinging to outcomes, identities, or reputations as if your survival depends on them. When you stop gripping life so tightly, you move lightly through the world. Others may mistake this lightness for naivety or lack of ambition. They assume that because you are not defensive, you are undefended. This is a profound error. The calm person has not abandoned awareness, they have refined it. They have learned that most battles are imaginary, fueled by ego and fear rather than necessity. By refusing to fight these imagined wars, they conserve energy for what truly matters. This refusal is not weakness, it is discernment. To disengage from unnecessary conflict is to reclaim sovereignty over your attention, and attention, once reclaimed, becomes one of the most powerful forces a person can wield. Consider how threatening it is, in a world addicted to noise, to be silent. Silence disrupts expectations. It denies the immediate feedback loop that people unconsciously crave. When you do not rush to fill space with explanations, defenses, or justifications, something fascinating happens. Others begin to project. Their own fears, assumptions, and insecurities spill into that empty space. Calmness becomes a mirror reflecting not what you say, but what they bring. And mirrors are dangerous, not because they attack, but because they reveal. This is why calm people often unsettle others without saying a word. They force self-confrontation simply by remaining present and unreactive. In silence, truths surface that noise would otherwise conceal. Many people fear this exposure more than conflict itself. Calmness removes the distractions that keep self-awareness at bay, and that alone can feel deeply destabilizing. Watts often spoke of the Taoist idea of wu-wei, effortless action. It does not mean doing nothing, but doing nothing forced. The calm person embodies this principle in everyday life. They act without strain, decide without anxiety, and move without resistance. Their danger lies not in aggression, but in alignment. When someone is aligned with reality rather than constantly fighting it, their actions carry a strange inevitability. There is no wasted energy, no internal contradiction. Like a river following gravity, they move naturally toward what is needed. You cannot stop such a person through opposition alone because they are not pushing against you. At most, you can divert them temporarily. But even then, they adapt, curve, and continue. Alignment creates momentum that doesn't rely on force, and momentum, once established, becomes unstoppable in the long run. Aggression is always a sign of inner conflict. It reveals a struggle that has not been resolved internally and is now projected outward. Calmness, on the other hand, suggests integration. The calm person has made peace with their contradictions, their fears, and their limitations. They are no longer trying to conquer themselves and therefore feel no urge to conquer others. They do not need dominance to feel secure. This inner harmony gives rise to a quiet authority that cannot be manufactured. People sense it instinctively. It does not demand obedience, it invites trust. This kind of authority is not imposed, it is felt. And what is felt cannot be argued against or dismantled through debate. It bypasses intellect and speaks directly to intuition. That is why calm presence often carries more weight than loud declarations ever could. To look harmless is also to be underestimated, and this is where the true danger lies. Underestimation breeds carelessness. When people assume you pose no threat, they lower their guard. They speak more freely, act more recklessly, and reveal their intentions without realizing it. The calm person observes all of this quietly. They listen, not with suspicion, but with awareness. They are not gathering information to exploit others, but to understand the terrain they are moving through. By the time action is required, the calm person already sees the full pattern. Their response may appear sudden or surprising, but in truth, it has been forming all along beneath the surface. What looks like spontaneity is actually clarity arriving at the right moment. Underestimation in this way becomes an advantage granted freely by others. Modern culture equates emotional intensity with authenticity. If you are not visibly upset, passionate, or reactive, you must not care deeply enough. I laugh at this assumption. Calmness does not mean indifference, it means depth. Shallow waters splash, churn, and make noise at the slightest disturbance. Deep waters remain still, not because nothing is happening, but because so much is happening beneath the surface. The calm person feels everything: joy, sorrow, frustration, love, but they are not drowned by their emotions. They have learned to contain intensity without suppressing it. This emotional depth makes them resilient. And resilience, unlike raw passion, endures. Passion burns hot and fast. Resilience sustains. It adapts. It survives storms without losing form. This quiet endurance is what makes calmness far more formidable than emotional volatility. There is also a spiritual dimension to calmness that goes far beyond emotional control or good manners. When you are no longer obsessed with defending a rigid sense of self, something loosens inside you. Identity stops feeling like a fragile structure that must be constantly protected. Instead, it becomes flexible, adaptable, alive. And flexibility is survival. The calm person can bend without breaking, adjust without losing their essence. They do not panic when circumstances shift, relationships change, or plans dissolve, because they understand at a deep, almost cellular level that change is the only constant. This understanding makes them dangerous to rigid systems that depend on predictability and compliance. Institutions, ideologies, and even individuals who rely on fixed roles feel threatened by someone who cannot be easily categorized or controlled. Calmness allows the individual to move fluidly through uncertainty without clinging to outdated narratives about who they must be. In this spiritual looseness there is great power. A person who is not internally rigid cannot be externally shattered. They adapt, evolve, and continue, quietly outlasting structures built on inflexibility. Harmless disarms expectations in a profound way. People anticipate retaliation, ego, defensiveness, or drama because that is how most interactions unfold. Calmness offers none of these familiar responses. This absence creates a strange vacuum in the emotional field, and nature abhors a vacuum. Others instinctively rush to fill it with their own reactions, over-explaining, projecting motives, escalating tension, or revealing insecurities. In doing so, they unknowingly expose their weaknesses. The calm person remains centered not because they are executing a strategy, but because they understand something fundamental about human behavior. Most conflicts are fueled by unconsciousness. When awareness enters the room, unconscious patterns unravel. Calmness introduces that awareness without force. It does not confront, it illuminates. And illumination often feels uncomfortable to those who rely on emotional chaos to maintain control. What appears passive from the outside is actually deeply active on a psychological level. Calmness reorganizes the emotional dynamics of a situation simply by refusing to participate in confusion. I often remind you that the universe is playful, not solemnly serious as the human mind likes to imagine. Calm people intuitively grasp this cosmic playfulness. They don't cling to insults as if their existence depends on defending themselves. They don't obsess over being right or winning every exchange. This lightness confuses those who live in perpetual seriousness, those who mistake tension for importance. When calm people laugh softly where others expect outrage, it destabilizes rigid mental frameworks. Confusion in this sense becomes quietly disruptive. You cannot control what you cannot categorize, and calm people resist easy classification. They are not predictable in the way reactive personalities are. Their refusal to be emotionally scripted makes them difficult to manipulate. Playfulness here is not immaturity, it is wisdom. It signals a deep understanding that life is not a battlefield to be conquered, but a dance to be participated in. This perspective alone undermines power structures built on fear and solemn authority. True calmness is not passivity, and confusing the two is a serious mistake. Passivity avoids action because of fear, uncertainty, or resignation. Calmness, by contrast, delays action out of wisdom and timing. The calm person is not frozen, they are attentive. They allow situations to reveal themselves fully before responding. When they finally move, they do so decisively, without hesitation or emotional excess. There is no wasted motion, no dramatic flourish, no need to justify. Their actions feel disproportionate to their demeanor because observers mistake stillness for emptiness. In reality, stillness is full of observation, understanding, and clarity. Like a still pond that conceals great depth, the calm person holds immense awareness beneath a quiet surface. When action emerges from this depth, it carries weight, it lands cleanly, and because it is not fueled by impulse, it is difficult to counter or undo. The calm person understands timing in a way that feels almost foreign in modern life. They do not rush to speak because they recognize that silence often communicates more than words ever could. They do not rush to act because waiting reveals patterns that haste obscures. In a culture addicted to immediacy, patience becomes subversive. It undermines systems driven by urgency, panic, and emotional reactivity. Calmness stretches time. It creates psychological space where better choices can be seen clearly rather than guessed at. In this expanded space, reactions lose their grip, and wisdom has room to surface. The calm person is not slow. They are precise. They move when movement matters, not when pressure demands it. This mastery of timing gives them an almost strategic advantage, though it is rooted not in calculation, but in presence. They are tuned to the rhythm of reality rather than the noise of urgency. To look harmless is also to be free in ways that many people never experience. Free from the compulsion to intimidate others in order to feel safe. Free from the need to dominate conversations, situations, or identities. Free from the exhausting fear of being misunderstood. This freedom is deeply unsettling to those who rely on control, because control depends on emotional hooks. Calm people cannot be easily hooked, shamed, or provoked. They have stepped outside the emotional economy that most people unconsciously trade in, an economy built on approval, validation, and reaction. When you no longer need to buy or sell these emotional currencies, your presence alone becomes destabilizing to the system. You are no longer predictable. You cannot be leveraged. And this independence, though quiet, is profoundly powerful. Watts might say that calmness is dangerous because it dissolves illusions rather than confronting them directly. The illusion that force equals strength, the illusion that noise equals truth, the illusion that identity must be defended at all costs. Calm awareness quietly erodes these false assumptions simply by existing. When these illusions collapse in the presence of calmness, people feel exposed, their strategies stop working, their narratives lose coherence. This exposure is often mistaken for threat because it destabilizes the familiar mental structures people rely on. Calmness does not attack these structures, it reveals their fragility, and fragility, once seen, cannot be unseen. This is why calm individuals are often labeled intimidating or unsettling despite their gentle demeanor. They remind others, without saying a word, that much of what we defend is imaginary. In the end, the art of looking harmless is the art of being whole. Wholeness means nothing is being suppressed or exaggerated for the sake of appearance. When you are whole, you do not need armor, emotional, psychological, or social. When you do not need armor, you move with ease through situations that would otherwise feel threatening. And when you move with ease, your presence alone begins to shift the emotional temperature of a room. Calm people change dynamics simply by being there. Conversations soften, aggression loses momentum, pretenses begin to crack. This influence is not a tactic or performance, it is a state of being. It cannot be faked and it cannot be rushed. It arises naturally from integration, when nothing inside you is at war with anything else. So calm people are not dangerous because they seek power, but because they no longer chase it. They have discovered through experience rather than theory that the greatest influence comes from alignment, not aggression. Like water, they yield without disappearing and endure without hardening. They soften edges while shaping outcomes. In a world that mistakes hardness for strength and volume for authority, this way of being is quietly revolutionary. Calm people expose the hollowness of force by embodying something deeper. They do not resist the world, they flow through it, altering its shape over time. And that is precisely why they are so dangerous to systems built on fear, noise, and control. Nothing threatens illusion more than clarity, and nothing carries clarity more gracefully than someone who has mastered the art of looking harmless.
You see, we spend most of our lives trying to get money, but very few ever stop to ask why they want it in the first place. We chase money as though it's oxygen, as though without it, we cannot live, breathe, or be happy. But have you noticed that the more desperate you are for it, the more it seems to run away? And when you finally stop running, when you stop chasing, it often seems to find its way to you effortlessly, like a bird that lands quietly on your shoulder when you're still. It's quite a curious thing. You want money because you want freedom, but in the chase for money, you often lose the very freedom you were seeking. You become anxious, impatient, and trapped by your own desire. You become like a man digging for water in the desert who forgets that the oasis was already inside him. Now, I want to tell you a secret that life has been whispering to you all along. The money comes faster when you stop needing it to come. When you stop begging the universe with the vibration of lack and begin to live as though you already possess abundance, everything begins to flow differently. Because reality, my dear friend, is not responding to your words. It is responding to your state of being. When you say, I want more money, what you are really declaring is, I don't have enough. And that feeling, that inner frequency, is what the world mirrors back to you. The universe is not your servant. It is your reflection. And whatever you feel most strongly becomes the signal it sends right back. I remember once saying that desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. You see, that is the trap when you tie your joy, your sense of self, your peace of mind to the arrival of money. You postpone happiness indefinitely. You wait for the outside world to change before you permit yourself to feel whole inside. But reality does not work that way. Reality rearranges itself around the vibration you are embodying. Now, the moment you say, I will be happy when I have money, you are broadcasting to existence that you are not yet happy, and existence simply reflects that. It will keep giving you situations that confirm your belief. This is why people stay poor, not because of a lack of effort, but because of the emotional atmosphere they live in, the inner weather they keep repeating each day. But imagine for a moment if you reversed it. What if you decided to feel abundant before the money comes? What if you walked through life with the vibration of someone who already has more than enough? What if you practiced gratitude not as a trick to get something, but as a state of genuine recognition that life itself is already full? Here's the paradox. The moment you stop using gratitude to manipulate the future, it actually begins to change. When you are no longer thanking the universe because you want it to do something for you, and instead thank it because you realize it already has, you step into the creative flow that allows more to come easily. Most people think they must do something to attract abundance. But the real secret is not in the doing, it's in the being. When your inner world is aligned with wealth, when you think, feel, and act like a person who already has it, is inevitable that your outer world will rearrange to reflect that. Because what you truly are inside cannot help but radiate outward. Think of it this way. You do not get money by running after it, just as you do not catch your own shadow by chasing it. You align with the light, and the shadow follows naturally. Money is the same. It is the shadow of your inner vibration. It follows the light of your consciousness. And the brighter that light, the faster the shadow moves to you. You see, money is not a reward from life. It is an expression of energy, a symbol of exchange, an extension of flow. When you are in a state of openness, creativity, and service, when you are genuinely giving your energy to life in a joyful way, money flows naturally as part of that current. But when you contract, when you tighten up with fear or lack, you dam the river. You block the current that was trying to bring you more. And this is the great irony of abundance. The tighter you hold on to it, the less you have. The more you let go, the more you receive. When you understand this, you begin to see why some people seem to magnetize wealth effortlessly. It's not that they are more intelligent, or luckier, or blessed by fate. It's that they have stopped resisting life. They have stopped sending out signals of fear and scarcity. They are not trying to get, they are allowing themselves to be. Now, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that if you wish for money to come faster, you must stop worshipping it. You must stop seeing it as your savior. You must begin to see it for what it truly is, an echo of your inner abundance, a reflection of your relationship with yourself. Ask yourself, how do I feel when I think about money? If you feel tense, anxious, impatient, or guilty, those are the vibrations you are feeding into the field. That is the emotional music you are playing to the universe. And the universe always dances to your tune. If your song is one of desperation, it will send you experiences that match desperation. If your song is one of ease, gratitude, and joy, then it will send you experiences that match that too. So instead of asking, how can I get more money? Ask, how can I feel more abundant right now? Because that feeling is the real currency. Money follows the feeling, not the other way around. You don't wait for a heater to get warm before turning it on. You generate the warmth first. The same applies here. You don't wait for external wealth to create internal abundance. You create the inner abundance, and the external wealth appears as a consequence. Now, the modern mind finds this deeply uncomfortable because we've been conditioned to believe that hard work and struggle are the only valid ways to succeed. We are taught to grind, to compete, to strive. But the truth is, effort without alignment is wasted energy. You can row a boat tirelessly, but if it's facing the wrong direction, you'll never reach your destination. When you are aligned internally, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are coherent, things begin to move swiftly, almost magically. Doors open without effort. Opportunities appear where none existed. People show up at the right moment. You call it coincidence, but it's simply coherence at work. The universe is a field of infinite intelligence, responding to frequency. Every thought, every emotion, every belief you hold emits a vibration. When your vibration says, I am abundant, the field mirrors it with situations that confirm that truth. But when your vibration says, I'm lacking, it reflects lack. You cannot deceive the universe. It doesn't listen to your words. It reads your energy. And so, money is not something you earn as much as something you allow. It comes through you, not to you. It flows through the channels of your belief, your gratitude, your openness, and your creativity. It comes faster when you stop pushing it away with resistance and begin to trust that it is part of the same flow that gives breath, sunlight, and life itself. When you truly grasp this, you'll understand why so many spiritual teachers speak about surrender not as a form of passivity, but as a deep act of trust. To surrender is not to sit and do nothing. It is to stop forcing things to happen. It is to stop resisting the natural rhythm of life. It is to know that you are already connected to everything you need, and that your only task is to align with it internally. You cannot attract abundance from a state of frustration. You cannot call in wealth from a vibration of need, because in that vibration, you are telling the universe that you are separate from abundance, and so you remain so. But when you relax, when you breathe deeply and truly feel that life itself supports you, money begins to flow toward you, not as a bribe, not as a prize, but as a natural expression of your trust. So, the doing that brings money faster is not doing in the conventional sense. It is not about hustling harder, or making more lists, or pushing yourself into exhaustion. It is the inner work, the aligning of your state with the energy of abundance. It's the silent practice of tuning your mind and emotions until they sing in harmony with prosperity. You don't need to manipulate the world. You need to harmonize with it. When you do, the world responds with synchronicity, grace, and ease. Now, let's talk about something even deeper, the energy behind the intention. Why do you want money? Truly? Most people say because I want to feel free, or I want to feel safe. But freedom and safety are not things that come after money. They are the states that allow money to arrive. When you feel free now, the vibration of freedom attracts experiences that match it, including financial opportunities. When you feel safe now, the vibration of safety magnetizes circumstances that confirm your safety, including money. So you must become the thing you wish to attract long before it appears. This is the mystical law of resonance, the same law that governs sound, music, and even the orbits of planets. If you listen to an orchestra, you'll notice that every instrument plays in harmony when tuned to the same frequency. Life operates the same way. When you tune your consciousness to the frequency of wealth through gratitude, trust, and joy, everything around you begins to harmonize. People, events, and ideas tune themselves to your vibration, and suddenly, what once seemed impossible becomes effortless. But if your inner world is dissonant, if one part of you believes in abundance while another part clings to fear, you create interference. You send mixed signals to the field, and the universe does not know which one to reflect. That's why self-awareness is the foundation of manifestation. You must become aware of the stories you tell yourself about money, the fears you inherited, the limitations you absorbed, the beliefs that no longer serve you. Because your beliefs are not truths. They are choices you've repeated so often that they've hardened into reality. But the moment you see them clearly, they begin to dissolve, and in their place, new possibilities emerge. When you begin to observe your relationship with money without judgment, something remarkable happens. You start to see that the anxiety, the grasping, the need to control, none of it is truly about the money itself. It's about what you believe money will fix. Somewhere deep within, you've been taught that money is the bridge between where you are and the life you want. But the truth is much gentler, much more profound. The bridge is your consciousness itself. If your consciousness is rooted in fear, you could win the lottery tomorrow and still feel unsafe. You could have millions in your account and yet feel poor inside. You'd still check your balance, still worry about losing it, still carry that faint vibration of not enough. Because wealth is not the amount of money you have, it's the amount of peace you feel when you have it. So what truly brings the money faster? Paradoxically, it is the release of the need for it. It is the moment when you realize that money was never the goal. It was only the mirror reflecting how deeply you trust life. When you trust completely, you become like the ocean that never worries whether it will receive another wave. You simply exist in the rhythm of give and take, ebb and flow. Consider how nature operates. The tree doesn't demand sunlight. It allows the sun to reach it. The river doesn't force its current. It simply flows according to gravity. The flower doesn't chase the bee. It blooms. And the bee arrives naturally. Yet humans, with all their cleverness, have managed to complicate the very principle of abundance. We've turned life into a contest. And in that contest, we've forgotten how to receive. To receive is not an act of laziness, it is an act of openness. And that openness is born of trust. When you trust that life supports you, you are no longer trying to force things into existence. You become receptive to the infinite possibilities already surrounding you. You stop narrowing your vision to the single path you believe will make you rich, and instead begin to see the countless other ways abundance can reach you. I once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious. Yet everyone rushes around in a panic, as though it were necessary to achieve something beyond that. This panic is the same one that makes you chase money. But if you pause, just pause and truly see where you are, you may notice that life is already taking care of you in thousands of invisible ways. The breath entering your lungs, the sunlight warming your skin, the way your body repairs itself without your command. These are all signs that abundance is already happening, here and now. When you feel that deeply, gratitude arises naturally, not as a mental exercise, but as a spontaneous recognition of how miraculous it all is. And in that recognition, your vibration shifts. The desperate current of I need softens into I am provided for. The clenched fist opens, and suddenly the river of prosperity can flow again. So, if you wish to make money come faster, stop thinking of it as something outside of yourself. Begin to treat every thought, every emotion, every action as a form of energetic currency. Ask yourself, what am I investing my energy in today? Are you spending it on worry, on comparison, on self-doubt? Or are you investing it in creativity and generosity and trust? Because whatever you give your attention to grows. Money follows energy, and energy follows attention. That is the secret that the mystics and the physicists both agree upon. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a participant in creation. Now, let's explore a simple shift that can transform your relationship with money almost overnight. Instead of asking, how can I get more? Ask, how can I give more? Not give more out of guilt, but out of abundance. Not because you feel obligated, but because giving affirms that you have more than enough. When you give freely, whether it's your time, your kindness, your talent, or your resources, you are declaring to the universe, I am abundant. And the universe, always echoing your state, responds in kind. It cannot help but fill the space you have opened. You become a conduit rather than a container, and the flow accelerates through you. But remember, giving must come from authenticity, not performance. If you give with the hidden hope that it will make you rich, the vibration of need still dominates, and the current remains slow. But if you give because you truly feel rich already, that energy becomes magnetic. People, opportunities, and ideas are drawn to that field of genuine abundance. Have you noticed how easy it is to trust people who are at peace with themselves? You can feel it even before they speak. Their presence radiates calm, their words carry weight, and their actions flow effortlessly. That is what money responds to. It flows toward coherence, confidence, and ease. It avoids confusion, desperation, and fear. So, your task is not to convince money to come. It is to become the kind of person money enjoys being around. You do this through presence. through awareness, through the simple act of bringing yourself back again and again to the truth that everything you need is already here in potential form. When you act from that knowing, your energy field becomes clear. You stop vibrating in two directions at once. You stop saying, I believe I can be wealthy, while secretly fearing that you can't. You begin to live from the state of I already am. That's when the miracles begin, not because the universe suddenly starts paying attention to you, but because you finally start paying attention to the universe. Now, let me tell you a small story, one that carries within it the essence of this whole teaching. There was once a man who lived in a small village. He worked tirelessly every day, hoping to save enough to build a better life. He counted his coins carefully, feared spending them, and went to sleep each night worrying that they would vanish. One day, a wise traveler passed through the village and said to him, "Why do you worry so much? The field you work in is full of gold." The man laughed. "Nonsense," he said. "I've worked that field for 20 years. There's only dirt and sweat in it." The traveler smiled. "Look again," he said. "Not with your eyes, but with your heart." The man was puzzled, but that night he sat quietly under the stars, and for the first time in years, he stopped worrying. He felt the cool wind, the hum of crickets, the quiet pulse of life around him. Something inside him softened. And the next morning, when he returned to the field, he noticed things he'd never seen before: the richness of the soil, the patterns of light, the gentle rhythm of the earth. He began to work differently, no longer with tension, but with joy. And within a year, his crops multiplied beyond measure. He realized then that the field had always been full of gold. It was his own vision that had been poor. You see, wealth does not come from outside. It comes through perception. When your eyes change, your world changes. And so, perhaps the greatest practice for attracting money faster is not affirmations, not strategy, not even meditation in the usual sense. It is awareness. Awareness of your own inner dialogue, awareness of the stories you tell about scarcity and struggle. When you see them clearly, you stop feeding them with belief. And in that very moment, your vibration shifts. Some people ask, "But Alan, if I stop worrying, if I stop caring so much about money, won't I become lazy? Won't I stop trying?" To that I say, no, you will finally begin living. For what we call laziness is often just the absence of fear. When you stop working out of fear, you begin creating out of love. You become more efficient, more inspired, and far more magnetic. Because action born of joy is infinitely more powerful than action born of worry. So here's what I suggest. Begin every morning with a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Before you look at your phone, before you check your bank account, close your eyes and say softly to yourself, "I am supported by life. I am connected to abundance. I am already enough." Feel it not as a mantra to fix something, but as a truth that is already here. Let that feeling expand in your chest until it fills your body. Then go about your day as if this were true. Spend money with joy, not fear. Speak about your goals with ease, not anxiety. Notice the small gifts life brings: a kind word, a smile, a new idea, and treat them as signs that abundance is flowing. Because it is. You will find that when you stop chasing, things begin to chase you. The phone rings, opportunities appear, coincidences multiply. This is not superstition, it is physics. The vibration you emit shapes the field around you. And when that vibration says, "I already have," the universe replies, "Indeed you do." Understand, though, that this is not a one-time trick. It is a way of being. You must keep returning to it every time your old conditioning tries to pull you back into fear. Every time you notice yourself tightening, judging, or doubting, simply pause. Take a breath. Remember the truth. Money is not your source. Life is. And life is infinite. As this awareness deepens, something even more extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see that what you really desired was never the money itself. It was expansion, expression, and experience. Money was just one of the ways life could deliver that. Once you realize that, the universe becomes infinitely creative in how it supports you. Sometimes the abundance comes as money. Sometimes it comes as opportunity, love, or insight. But it always comes. And in that realization, you are free. Because when you are no longer dependent on one form of abundance, you open yourself to all of them. You stop being a beggar at the door of life and remember that you are, in fact, life itself, endless, expressive, abundant. So the money comes faster by doing this, by being what you seek, by letting go of the constant effort to acquire and instead embody the state of already having, by relaxing into the present moment and trusting that life is intelligent enough to arrange itself on your behalf. You don't attract wealth by chasing wealth. You attract it by living richly rich in thought, in gratitude, in giving, in trust. And when you live that way, the external wealth has no choice but to match it. Remember, life does not reward desperation, it mirrors vibration. So practice joy now. Practice generosity now. Practice the feeling of abundance now. And soon, you will find that the money was never late. It was simply waiting for you to arrive at the right frequency. Because in the end, abundance is not something you pursue, it is what you are. And when you realize that fully, you'll laugh, as I often do, at the cosmic joke of it all, that you were never trying to get money. You were only trying to remember that you already had everything you needed to let it flow. It's a strange game we play. We spend our lives trying to repair ourselves, as if we were somehow damaged, forever polishing the mask we show the world. And yet, if you look closely at the great figures of history, the ones who actually changed things, who actually lived, you'll notice something peculiar. They were all cracked, every single one of them, broken in some way. And it wasn't despite their brokenness that they became who they were. It was because of it. Now, this goes against everything we've been taught, doesn't it? We're told to hide our wounds, to cover our scars, to pretend that we have it all together. But what if I told you that your very brokenness, the thing you're most ashamed of, is precisely what the universe needs from you? What if the crack in your character is not a flaw, but a feature? Let me be very clear about something from the start. When I say damaged, I'm not talking about someone who is careless or irresponsible, or who uses their pain as an excuse. No. I'm talking about the person who has been to the edge, who has looked into the darkness of their own soul and come back trembling. I'm talking about the person who knows, really knows, that they are not self-sufficient, that they cannot do this thing called life on their own. These are the people the universe chooses, not because they are weak, but because they are awake. You see, the universe has no use for the self-made man. That fellow who struts around, believing he pulled himself up by his own bootstraps, who thinks his success is entirely his own doing. He's a closed system. There's no space for anything greater to work through him, because he's already filled to the brim with himself. But the damaged person, the broken one, they have cracks, and through those cracks, light gets in. Think about water for a moment. If you have a perfectly sealed container, water cannot enter. But if there's a crack, the tiniest opening, water finds its way in. It seeps through. It fills the space. This is how grace works. This is how the power of existence itself works. It cannot enter where there is no opening. And damage creates openings. Now I want you to understand something very important here. Being damaged is not the same as being destroyed. A cup with a crack can still hold water. A window with a chip can still let in light. In fact, sometimes that chip creates the most beautiful patterns when the sun hits it just right. Your damage is like this. It doesn't disqualify you from being used by life. It qualifies you. Look at the great spiritual figures throughout history. Moses, they say, had a speech impediment. He could barely talk, and yet he was chosen to be the voice of God to his people. How absurd is that? The universe picks a man who cannot speak properly to deliver the most important message in history. Why? Because Moses knew he couldn't do it alone. He knew he needed help. He knew he was insufficient. And in that knowing, he became a perfect vessel. Or consider David, a small shepherd boy overlooked by his own family, considered too young, too weak, too insignificant. And yet it was precisely this David, this damaged goods in the eyes of society, who became the great king, because David never forgot where he came from. He never forgot his smallness. Even when he wore a crown, he remembered he was just a shepherd boy who the universe had picked up and used. The pattern is everywhere once you start looking for it. Paul, the great apostle, was a murderer. He hunted down and killed the very people whose cause he would later champion. Can you imagine the weight of that? The knowledge that you destroyed the lives of those you now claim to serve? And yet, it was this very guilt, this very awareness of his own capacity for evil, that made him such a powerful teacher. He knew he was saved not by his own goodness, but by something far beyond himself. Here's what happens when you're damaged. You lose the illusion of control. You realize you're not running the show. Most people walk through life believing they're in charge. That if they just work hard enough, plan well enough, be good enough, everything will turn out fine. But the damaged person knows better. They've seen how quickly everything can fall apart. They've felt the ground give way beneath their feet. And in that terrible moment of falling, they learn something the comfortable never learn. They learn to trust what catches them. This is why the universe chooses damaged people. Because they've learned to let go. They've learned to relax into life rather than trying to grip it with white knuckles. Have you ever tried to float in water? If you tense up, if you try to control every movement, you sink. But if you relax, if you trust the water, it holds you. Life is exactly like this. The damaged person has learned to float. Now let me tell you what damage really is. It's not the thing that happened to you. It's not the addiction, the abuse, the failure, the loss. Those are just events. Damage is what happens inside you when you finally admit that those events changed you, that you're not the same person you were before, that you cannot go back to who you were. This admission, this acknowledgement of change, this is what creates the crack through which light enters. Most people, when something terrible happens, they spend all their energy trying to go back to normal. They want to return to who they were before. But the damaged person realizes there is no going back. The old self is gone. And in the space where the old self used to be, something new can grow. Something that wasn't possible before. This is not recovery. This is transformation. And transformation is what the universe is after. You know what's fascinating? The people who have never been broken often have the hardest time with life. They're brittle. When something difficult comes along, they shatter because they've never learned to bend. But the person who has already been broken, who has already been bent out of shape, they have a kind of flexibility. They can move with life's changes rather than resisting them. They're like old wood that has weathered many storms. Strong not because it's rigid, but because it knows how to sway. I want to tell you about something that happens when you accept your damage. You become humble. You realize you're not the star of the show. You're not even the director. You're just one small part of an enormous production. And this realization, far from being depressing, is actually tremendously liberating. Because when you know you're not in charge, you can stop trying to control everything. You can stop exhausting yourself trying to manage every outcome. You can simply do your part and let the rest unfold as it will. This is what the ancient Chinese called wu wei, effortless action. Not doing nothing, but doing without straining, working without forcing. And you can only do this when you've been humbled by your own limitations. The proud man, the one who thinks he has it all together, he's always fighting. Fighting against circumstances, fighting against other people, fighting against life itself. He's in a constant state of resistance. But resistance is exhausting. The damaged person has learned that resistance is futile, not in a defeatist way, but in a deeply accepting way. They've learned to work with life rather than against it. Here's something else that happens when you're damaged. You develop compassion, real compassion, not the fake kind where you look down on others and feel sorry for them, but the kind where you recognize yourself in everyone you meet, because you know what it's like to struggle, to fail, to be at the end of your rope. You know what it's like to need help. And this knowing makes you gentle with others in a way that the undamaged can never be. The person who has never really suffered often judges those who are suffering. They think, why don't they just pull themselves together? Why don't they just try harder? But the damaged person knows it's not that simple. They know that sometimes trying harder is exactly the wrong thing to do. Sometimes you have to stop trying and simply surrender. And this knowledge, born of personal experience, makes them able to help others in ways the comfortable never could. Now, I need to say something about what damage is not. Damage is not an excuse. It's not a reason to give up, or to wallow in self-pity, or to treat others badly. If your damage has made you bitter, resentful, cruel, then you've missed the lesson. You've taken your pain and turned it inward or outward as poison, rather than allowing it to crack you open. The difference between the person the universe can use and the person it cannot is this. One person looks at their damage and says, why me? This is unfair. I am cursed. The other person looks at their damage and says, what is this trying to teach me? How is this making me more human? What am I supposed to learn from this? Both are damaged, but only one is becoming wise. There's a story I love about a man who goes to see a teacher. He says, Master, I have so many problems. I am anxious. I am depressed. I have addictions. I have failed at everything I've tried. How can I possibly be of any use? And the teacher says, you have just listed your qualifications. The man is confused. And the teacher explains, your anxiety has taught you that life is uncertain. Your depression has taught you that happiness cannot be forced. Your addictions have taught you that you need help. Your failures have taught you humility. These are not disqualifications. These are your credentials. This is what I mean when I say the universe chooses damaged people. It's not that it looks for people who are broken and says, oh, let me use them. It's that brokenness creates the conditions necessary for something greater to work through you. It's like how a seed must break open before it can become a plant. The seed that stays intact, perfectly sealed, perfect in its seedness, will never grow. And what emerges from that crack is not the old you, perfectly restored. It's something entirely new. Something that was always waiting inside you, but could never come out, because the shell was too hard. Now with the shell cracked, it can finally emerge. Let me tell you what I've observed. The people who change the world are never the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who struggled, who failed, who fell down and got back up so many times they lost count. Why? Because struggle teaches you things that comfort never can. It teaches you that you're stronger than you thought. It teaches you that you can survive what you thought would destroy you. It teaches you that there's something in you, or working through you, that is greater than your circumstances. And here's the beautiful part. Once you've learned this, once you've really learned it in your bones, you become fearless. Not fearless in the sense that you're never afraid, but fearless in the sense that you know fear is just a feeling, and feelings past. You know that even if the worst happens, you'll be okay, because you've already survived the worst, or something close to it, and you're still here. This is the great secret of damaged people. Free to take risks, free to speak truth, free to love without holding back, because they know that holding back doesn't protect you anyway. I want you to think about this for a moment. Who would you rather learn from? Someone who has never failed, who has always succeeded at everything they tried, who has never known real suffering, or someone who has fallen flat on their face, who has known despair, who has clawed their way back from the edge. The first person can tell you about success, but the second person can tell you about life. The universe chooses damaged people because they have wisdom that the comfortable don't have. They've been refined by fire, they've had the unnecessary burned away. What remains is essential, true, real. And this is what the universe needs. Not people who are perfect, but people who are real. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When you accept your damage, when you stop trying to hide it or fix it or pretend it's not there, something magical happens. Other people see it and they recognize themselves in you. Your damage becomes a bridge, a way for others to cross from their isolation into connection. Because everyone is damaged in some way. Everyone has wounds they're trying to hide. But when you stop hiding yours, you give others permission to stop hiding theirs. This is how healing happens. Not through pretending to be whole, but through admitting you're broken. Not through presenting a perfect image, but through showing your scars. Your willingness to be vulnerable, to be seen in your damage. This is what allows others to be vulnerable too. And in that mutual vulnerability, something beautiful happens. Connection. Real, deep, human connection. The universe doesn't choose damaged people to do its work. Despite their damage, it chooses them because of it. Because damage creates humility. Humility creates openness. Openness creates space. And in that space, something greater can work. Call it God. Call it the universe. Call it the power of life itself. Whatever you call it, it needs space to work. And damage creates that space. So if you're sitting there thinking, I'm too broken to be of any use, I'm too damaged to matter, I've made too many mistakes, let me tell you something. You're exactly who the universe is looking for. Your brokenness is not a bug, it's a feature. Your damage is not a disqualification, it's your credential. Your wounds are not shameful secrets. They're badges of honor that say, I have lived, I have suffered, I have learned, and I am still here. The universe doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real ones. It doesn't need more people who have it all together. It needs more people who are willing to fall apart and be put back together in a new way. It doesn't need more people pretending to be strong. It needs more people who know they're weak and let something stronger work through them. This is the great paradox. Power is made perfect in weakness. Not despite weakness, but in it, through it, by means of it. The very thing you think disqualifies you is what qualifies you. The very wound you're trying to hide is the door through which light can enter. The very damage you're ashamed of is the crack through which grace flows. So stop trying to fix yourself. Stop trying to present a perfect image. Stop pretending you have it all together. Instead, be honest about your damage, acknowledge your brokenness, admit your need for help. And then, in that moment of honest vulnerability, you'll discover something amazing. You're not alone. You've never been alone. And the very damage you thought made you unusable is what makes you perfect for what the universe needs you to do. And the best vessels are the ones that have been broken and put back together. They're the ones that know they're just containers, not the thing contained. They're the ones that let light pass through them because they're full of cracks. And that light, that power, that grace, it shines all the brighter because of those cracks. So be damaged. Be broken. Marriage as we know it is often a beautiful illusion crafted from fear. The socially sanctioned promise to make love stay. And yet, love, like water, slips through clenched fists. We swear before priests and judges that we will feel the same way forever, that we will keep our hearts fixed like the stars. But the universe doesn't work like that, neither does the heart. We say, I love you, but then we must notarize it, stamp it, file it in legal documents. What was once wild and spontaneous becomes measured, certified, and sealed under watchful eyes. We have turned marriage into a contract, not a dance, a bond of ownership, rather than a celebration of freedom. Most people, when they say, I do, unconsciously mean, you're mine now. That is often where the trouble begins. For while some rare and beautiful unions do thrive in shared commitment, many falter when love becomes entangled with possession. You cannot bind another soul and expect it to remain free, and love above all needs space to breathe if it is to sing. Falling in love is divine madness. It is irrational, uncontrollable, and glorious. You don't rise into love, you fall. There is something fundamentally risky about it, something sacred. Because to love is to surrender, to give up control. To fall is to say, here I am, do what you will with me. Sensible people don't fall in love. They calculate, they measure, they protect. But the moment you fall in love, you are no longer in control. That is why it is mad. And in that madness, there is a higher sanity. Now here's where the real trouble begins. We try to capture the mystery of love and lock it in a legal cage. We go before judges and priests and, in the name of God, the state, and sometimes even the police, we swear to feel a certain way forever. Can you imagine? We take something as wild and unpredictable as falling in love and we try to make it permanent, binding, respectable. It's as if love isn't real unless it's signed, sealed, and witnessed by vicars and attorneys. And so this lightning bolt from the sky, this mad surrender of the soul, is converted into a contractual obligation, a legal performance. You're no longer dancing, you're following choreography. And so the sacred becomes rehearsed. Spontaneity gives way to strategy. You keep little lists of things to remember, the right words, the right gestures, the right timing. You are now managing love. You are working at it. And the more you work at it, the less it is there. Love, which was once a leap of faith, has now become a performance under contract. And in that effort to keep it, to secure it, we strangle it. It retreats quietly, respectfully behind the curtains of duty and obligation. Marriages don't always fail with drama. Most collapse quietly under the weight of our attempt to control what was never meant to be controlled. The real tragedy is not that love disappears, it's that we pretend it hasn't. We convince ourselves that if we just act loving enough, if we go through the motions, the feeling will catch up. But that is not how the heart works. We send flowers, we write notes, we plan dinners, but not from desire, from duty. We become performers on a stage we did not realize we had stepped onto. And the audience is not our beloved, but our own fear. Fear of failure, fear of change, fear of being alone. You cannot force love to behave. The more you grip it, the more it slips away. It is like holding a flame in your hand. The tighter your fist, the faster it dies. We don't talk about this much because we're afraid, because we were told that true love means permanence, that if it changes, it was never real. You see, most of us were raised to believe that real love means forever. But who said that? Where did we get this idea that if it doesn't last until death, it wasn't true? What whispered that myth into our ears so convincingly that we never stopped to question it? This is the root of so much suffering. Because the moment we believe love must be permanent to be valid, we begin to fight change. And yet, look at the universe, nothing stays the same. Galaxies spin, stars collapse, even mountains erode. The only thing that doesn't change is plastic. And we dare to think love should? When we let go of the belief that love equals forever, something incredible happens. We stop clutching. We stop demanding. Love stops being a jail and starts becoming what it always was meant to be, a freedom, a presence, a moment of shared wonder that asks for nothing but honesty. You know you're in love, not because you've made a promise, but because you feel joy in their presence. You feel the urge to protect what you love, to nurture it. You feel pain when it suffers, peace when it's near. And most of all, love reveals itself in the giving, in the watching, in the simple act of being with. But then fear creeps in, the fear of losing. And so we try to bind it, control it, freeze it in place. We confuse our need for certainty with love itself. And in doing so, we kill the very thing we meant to protect. But this simply isn't true. Love changes. It breathes. It pulses. It has its own seasons. And pretending that it doesn't is what slowly kills it. Honesty, not effort, is the lifeblood of connection. Better to say, this is how I feel now, than to pretend you still feel how you once did. To love someone truly is not to promise eternal passion. It is to promise presence. And presence only exists in truth. People work very hard to keep a marriage together. And as they do so, they may fail to recognize that they are being untrue to their own emotions. They say, I must control my feelings for the sake of the children, for the sake of society. And so they work and work. And one of the ways of working is to convince yourself that you are still in love. You go through the motions. You hypnotize yourself with loving language. You remember to buy the flowers. You keep a diary for anniversaries because forgetting would be unacceptable. You do the things you're supposed to do, and you think, this is what love must be. The performance goes on, but the presence has left the stage. And what once was alive, spontaneous and mad and beautiful has become respectable and dead. That, you see, is the tragedy. Not that love disappears, but that we pretend it hasn't. Not that we change, but that we lie about it. And in doing so, we trade the real for the role. And that, my friends, is how most marriages quietly wither not from conflict, but from pretense. You see, love is not something you can work on like a job. It is a flame. And if you try to pin it down, it dies. You cannot force a feeling to remain by obligation. And yet, this is precisely what so many marriages are built, upon a quiet, desperate pretending. And I speak not from theory, but from bitter experience. You build yourself into a wall-to-wall emotional trap, and in the background, something in you knows it's not real. You feel it, like a ghost. The true feeling, the spontaneous magic, it's gone, but the performance must go on. This is why the mystery dies. Not because love is gone, but because truth is. The honesty that once connected two people has been replaced by performance. And so the marriage continues respectable on the outside, but quietly crumbling within. You see, to love someone truly is not to chain them to a past feeling. It is to stand present with them every day and to say honestly, this is where I am now, and to let them do the same. That is the only kind of love worth having, the kind that breathes, the kind that changes, the kind that is free. Now let's look clearly at what people mean when they say, my husband or my wife. You see, behind that little possessive pronoun is a very old and very dangerous illusion that love means ownership. It doesn't. You do not own another human being. You do not own their soul, their body, or their attention. And the moment you try to, the whole thing begins to rot. We think that by securing someone legally, ceremonially, and socially, we somehow keep the love in place. But love, by its very nature, is free. It arises when you're not looking. It dances only when the music is real. The more you try to pin it down, the more it slips away. To say, I love you, should never mean, now you belong to me. It should mean, I choose to dance with you now, and I'll choose again tomorrow if the music still moves us. But instead we shackle it. We say, you may not change. You must continue to be who I need you to be. And when the other inevitably begins to shift us, all things must we feel betrayed. Not because they were dishonest, but because we expected permanence in a world that only offers movement. The truth is, you don't need someone to be yours. You need them to be themselves. And if they choose to share that with you, then you are blessed. But if you demand it, expect it, or require it, you have already lost it. Love is not a cage. It's not a certificate. It's not a role in a play. It is simply the freedom to see another as they are and to let them be. We must begin to imagine a different kind of relationship. One not based on obligation, but on presence. Not on permanence, but on participation. You see, love isn't something you can force to last forever by swearing to it. The moment you make it a duty, you've robbed it of its essence. Real love, like real music, happens in the moment. It is not a means to an end, it is the point itself. Now, suppose two people say to each other, let us agree not to trap one another. Let us be honest, rather than loyal to a performance. That, you see, could be the beginning of something true. Instead of saying, I will always love you, say, I will be true to how I feel. And I will respect how you feel, even when it changes, because it will change. Everything does. A marriage, if it is to be anything sacred, must be a daily meeting of two people who allow each other to be. Not a prison of promises, but a shared space of mutual freedom. And the irony, of course, is that only in freedom can love truly thrive. Only when you stop trying to hold someone do they come willingly. Only when you let go does anything real begin. Let marriage, then, be not a trap of fixed roles, but a place where two individuals meet in truth, again and again, where change is not feared, but welcome, where love is not performed, but allowed. And when it fades, as all forms do, we do not blame it for ending. We simply acknowledge that it lived, and that is enough. You see, many of us grew up with this picture of what love and marriage should look like: forever smiles, unchanging vows, and happily ever after. But real life isn't like that. People change. Feelings shift. Circumstances evolve. And that doesn't mean something went wrong. It just means life is alive. If you've ever sat next to someone you once loved and felt the silence between you grow heavier over time, you'll understand. If you've ever tried to force the connection to stay the same when it's already moved on, you'll understand. And if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt that you're not the same person who said, I do, years ago, then you already know the truth. Love isn't supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be real. And real love, like all living things, needs room to breathe, to stumble, to transform. It doesn't always last in the way we imagined, but that doesn't mean it failed. Sometimes love ends, and sometimes it begins again in a new way with someone else, or even within yourself. So if you're in love, be present, be honest, don't chain it down with fear, and if you're letting go, do it with grace. Thank the love that brought you here, and know this: you are not broken. You are growing. Let love be what it truly is. A gift freely given, not a contract.
The more you try to control things, the more you will find that you are being controlled yourself. Let go, and the whole universe flows through you. We live in a society that worships control. From the moment we are born, we are taught that life is a series of problems to solve, challenges to overcome, and goals to achieve. We believe that the more we organize, plan, and hold tightly to the reins of our existence, the safer and happier we will become. And yet, as we grow older, a strange contradiction emerges. The more we try to control life, the more life seems to resist us. The harder we grip, the faster it slips away. It is almost comical when you think about it. Consider the way we structure our days, meticulously planning every hour, anticipating every potential outcome, and attempting to predict the unpredictable. We wake up each morning with a mental checklist, a blueprint for how the day should unfold. And yet, in a single moment, the unexpected appears: a traffic jam, a delayed message, a sudden illness, and our carefully laid plans unravel. Frustration arises, and we label this as bad luck, when in reality, it is merely life refusing to be tamed. Control, as it turns out, is not a mastery of reality. It is an illusion, a mental construct that gives the appearance of stability while masking the inherent unpredictability of existence. We cling to it because it feels safe. We cling because to acknowledge the lack of control is to confront uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying. Yet the paradox is that this very attempt to hold tightly creates tension, anxiety, and fear. The more we try to secure life, the more fragile it becomes. Think of a child learning to walk. The child takes their first tentative steps, falling repeatedly, scraping knees, and wobbling with each attempt. The parent watches, worried, perhaps even wanting to intervene and prevent the stumbles. Yet, the child learns not through control or interference, but through experience, through trial and error, through the very act of letting the body and the world interact freely. This is life's natural way. The parent cannot stop every fall, just as we cannot stop the events of the universe from unfolding. The river does not pause to ask your permission before it flows. The wind does not stop for you to adjust your plans. The sun rises and sets without concern for your schedules or desires. And yet, there is a strange harmony in all of this, a rhythm that persists regardless of our attempts to manipulate it. When we resist this flow, we experience suffering. When we surrender, we experience life. Consider the metaphor of the river. We often stand on the banks, attempting to push the water in a direction we desire, thinking that by shaping it, we can achieve our goals. And yet, the river will always carve its own path, indifferent to our efforts. To fight the current is exhausting, painful, and ultimately fruitless. But to enter the river, to move with it rather than against it, is to discover a freedom that cannot be grasped through force. This is the essence of the illusion of control. It is the belief that we can bend life to our will, when in reality, life is a river and we are merely travelers. It is not only external events we attempt to control, but also our inner world. We strive to manage our thoughts, suppress our emotions, and shape our identities into something stable and permanent. Yet the mind is a flowing river as well, constantly moving, changing, and evolving, attempting to hold a single thought, to cage a feeling, or to solidify a sense of self is like trying to trap water in your hands. It slips away, leaving only frustration and a sense of inadequacy. We must recognize that control is often a response to fear. We fear the unknown, the unpredictable, the unplanned. We fear that if we let go, we will lose ourselves, we will be swept away, we will fall into chaos. But the truth is that life is chaotic anyway. To cling is to resist the inevitable. To release is to embrace reality. There is a liberation in understanding that the need for control is optional, that it is a habit of the mind, not a requirement of existence. Let us consider the human desire for security. We work tirelessly to secure jobs, relationships, wealth, and possessions, believing that these external anchors will protect us from uncertainty. And yet, no matter how much we accumulate, the impermanence of life remains. Jobs end, relationships change, wealth can vanish, and bodies age. Security, when it is external, is always provisional. True stability is found not in controlling life, but in understanding its nature and participating fully in its flow. History is filled with examples of people who sought total control only to discover its futility. Emperors, kings, and rulers have tried to bend entire nations to their will, yet time, disease, and unforeseen events have always undermined their efforts. The lesson is clear. No matter how much power we accumulate, the universe remains unconcerned with our ambitions. The only freedom is to acknowledge this truth and live in accordance with it. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. Participation in life is necessary, yet it is participation without attachment to outcomes. It is action guided by insight, not fear. It is engagement that is responsive rather than coercive, fluid rather than rigid. It is the difference between dancing with life and trying to wrestle it into submission. When we release the illusion of control, something profound happens. We become present. We notice the subtle textures of experience, the rustling of leaves, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter. Life becomes vivid, alive, and immediate. We discover that the need to control often distracts us from the very experiences we seek to secure. By letting go, we are no longer trapped in anxiety about the future or regret over the past. We are free to encounter the world as it is, in all its beauty and unpredictability. And so, the first step toward freedom is awareness. Recognize the illusions you hold, the attempts at control that bind you, the fears that drive your grip. Observe them without judgment. Understand that these impulses are natural yet not necessary. Begin to loosen your hold, even in small ways. Let a conversation unfold without planning every word. Let a day pass without trying to predict every outcome. Let yourself feel fully without attempting to shape or suppress what arises. The journey is gradual. Letting go is not a single act, but a continuous practice, a dance between effort and surrender. Each moment offers a chance to release a little more, to trust a little more, to participate more fully in the flow of life. The illusion of control begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet, steady presence. And in that presence, a freedom emerges, a freedom that cannot be given, taken, or lost, because it was never bound in the first place. To understand why letting go feels right, we must first understand what it means to let go. Letting go is often misunderstood as giving up, as surrendering in defeat, as stepping away from life. But in truth, letting go is the acknowledgement of reality. It is the recognition that life is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to be experienced. It is the act of opening our hands, not to relinquish life, but to allow life to flow through us, unimpeded and unshaped by fear. Imagine standing in a forest. The trees rise high, each one unique, bending in the wind without resistance. The birds sing without rehearsal. The stream moves without effort. You cannot command these things, and yet they exist in harmony. The forest does not try to control itself. It's simply island. In observing this, something awakens within you. You sense the ease, the rhythm, the natural order of things. And you begin to understand that the act of controlling is not necessary for existence. It is participation, awareness, and presence that matter. Letting go is not about abandoning responsibility. It is about releasing the belief that we can enforce outcomes or cling to permanence. It is the difference between holding life like a fist and holding it like a hand open to the sky. The open hand does not resist, it does not suffocate, it allows, it receives, it participates. When we practice this in our daily lives, we find that life no longer feels like a battle, but like a dance. Each movement, whether expected or unforeseen, is part of the rhythm. Consider our emotions. We often try to control feelings, to suppress anger, sadness, or fear, believing that these states are dangerous or undesirable. And yet, by resisting them, we amplify them. By letting go, by acknowledging and feeling without judgment, we discover that emotions are like waves. They rise, they crest, they fall. They do not define us, they move through us. Letting go in this context means allowing the wave to pass rather than clinging to it or trying to stop it. In relationships, letting go means allowing others to be themselves without attempting to mold them into our expectations. It means loving without possession, listening without trying to fix, and participating without attachment. The freedom that arises from this openness is profound. Relationships transform from battles of control into spaces of genuine connection, understanding, and mutual respect. The world often tempts us to control, to predict, to plan. Yet the universe operates according to principles far greater than our design. Storms will arrive, paths will change, and life will surprise us in ways we cannot anticipate. Letting go does not mean ignoring these events. It means meeting them with a mind unbound by fear, with a heart open to possibility. It is the conscious decision to engage fully while acknowledging the limits of our power. Why does letting go feel right? Because it aligns us with the natural order. When we stop fighting against what is, tension dissipates. The mind relaxes, the heart opens, and we experience a sense of spaciousness. There is a subtle joy in this surrender, a quiet delight that arises from the recognition that we are not in charge, and that this is not only acceptable but beautiful. Imagine a bird learning to fly. It does not cling to the branch forever. At some point, it must leap, trusting its wings, trusting the air, trusting the process. Life, in this sense, is always asking us to take flight, to let go of the false safety of control, and to trust the journey. When we leap, we discover that the world supports us in ways we could not have imagined. We are carried, held, and guided by the flow of existence. Letting go also reveals the richness of the present moment. When we are no longer preoccupied with controlling the future or clinging to the past, we notice the subtleties of life, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet rhythm of our own breath. Life, in all its simplicity and complexity, is fully present. And in being fully present, we discover a profound contentment that no amount of control can provide. The practice of letting go is continuous. It requires awareness, courage, and patience. Each day, we are presented with opportunities to release small grips, to loosen our hold, to trust more deeply. Over time, these small acts accumulate, transforming our experience of life. The illusion of control fades, replaced by a steady, gentle confidence in the flow of existence. In letting go, we find that life itself is enough. We do not need to manipulate, to engineer, or to dominate. The world is alive, vibrant, and unfolding in its own way. By surrendering the need to control, we participate in a dance far greater than ourselves. We discover freedom, joy, and an effortless presence that cannot be manufactured, only realized. So release. Release with trust, release with curiosity, release with love. Allow life to move through you, shaping and guiding you in ways your mind could never anticipate. In this letting go, you will find that you are not losing anything, you are gaining everything. A life lived fully, freely, and beautifully.
You see, most people go through life under the strange illusion that other people make them angry, that the world out there with its noise and nonsense somehow creeps inside and shakes the calm from within. But that's rather like blaming the mirror for the expression on your face. The truth is, nobody can bother you. They can only touch the part of you that is already disturbed. And the more you try to fight it, the more entangled you become in the very net you're trying to escape. Peace doesn't come by stiffening against life, but by realizing there's no one to stiffen. The waves rise and fall, and the ocean never minds. In the same way, anger, irritation, frustration, they come and go, but they are not you. To be unbothered is not to build a wall around yourself, but to see that there was never a separate self to defend in the first place. You see, when something happens, a disrespecting word, a sudden disappointment, a rude interruption, there's a tiny instant before you react. Most people never notice it. They leap from stimulus to response like a spark from flint, and then wonder why they feel burned. But in that small space, that fraction of a moment before the mind begins to chatter, lies your freedom. That's the gap where life gives you the chance to wake up, instead of merely react. The event itself is neutral. It has no meaning until you give it one. When someone calls you a fool, the insult only works if you believe in the fool they're talking to. If you don't, the words just vanish into thin air. So the game is not about controlling what happens, because that's impossible. It's about watching what happens within you and realizing, I don't have to pick that thought up. Anger only asks one thing of you, participation. The moment you stop playing, it dies of neglect. To react less is not weakness. It's the highest form of intelligence. It means you've remembered that you were never the puppet. One of the great sources of human misery is the quiet expectation that other people should know better. We spend an extraordinary amount of time waiting for the world to behave sensibly, as if everyone else secretly agreed to follow our rulebook. But of course they didn't. They never signed your invisible contract. They're simply playing their own game, completely unaware that you expected them to dance to yours. And when they don't, when they lie, forget, interrupt, disappoint, we feel offended, as though the universe itself has made some terrible mistake. Yet it hasn't. That's just the mind insisting they shouldn't be like that. But they are. Expecting people to act like you is like expecting the cat to bark because you're in the mood for a dog. When you give up demanding harmony from the world, you begin to laugh at how seriously you once took everyone else's behavior. And laughter, you see, is the sound of freedom returning. Once you stop expecting people to behave like you, another realization quietly dawns. You also stop needing them to agree with you. Because disagreement, you see, is just diversity in disguise. The same life that makes trees grow crooked makes minds grow in different directions. It's rather silly to demand that everyone see through your eyes when their windows open onto entirely different skies. And that's where most of our suffering begins. Not in what people do, but in our desperate urge to make them see it our way. So before we can ever find peace with others, we must loosen our grip on this idea of being right, this little badge we polish and wear upon the chest of me. We are terribly concerned, you know, with being right. It's one of our favorite addictions, the sweet intoxication of certainty. We argue, we defend, all to protect this fragile little castle called my opinion. But what if being right isn't the point at all? What if life isn't a debate to be won, but a dance to be enjoyed? Because notice, every time you must be right, someone else must be wrong. And so the world divides itself neatly into enemies and fools, all invented by your need to feel secure. The truth doesn't belong to anyone. It plays hide and seek through all of us. And the moment you stop chasing it, it comes and sits quietly beside you. When you drop the obsession with being right, you begin to listen, not to prepare a counter-argument, but to truly hear. You find that peace isn't born from victory. It comes when there's no longer anything to defend. So let others cling to their certainties. Let them win, because the one who no longer needs to win has already found the only thing worth keeping. It's peace. And when you no longer need to be right, you'll notice something quite extraordinary. Other people's opinions begin to lose their gravity. For so long, our sense of being right was tied to our sense of being somebody. And when that somebody feels threatened, even the gentlest disagreement sounds like thunder. But once you stop defending an image of yourself, the thunder becomes only noise, and the sky remains perfectly clear. You realize that what people say about you is simply an echo of their own mind, a reflection bouncing off their own glass. If you mistake that reflection for your face, you will spend your life trying to polish someone else's mirror. It's rather curious how much power we give to sound. Someone utters a few vibrations through the air, a sentence, a label, a careless remark, and suddenly your entire sense of self begins to tremble. You take their words, wear them like tattoos, and then wonder why you feel marked. But tell me, what exactly is being wounded? The sound passes, the air settles, and all that remains is your idea of what it meant. You see, the insult doesn't live in their mouth. It lives in your memory. When someone says you're foolish, that statement doesn't describe you. It describes their vision, their mood, their moment. Why let their passing weather become your climate? To depend on another's praise or blame is to hang your heart on a wind chime. Every breeze becomes a storm. Freedom begins when you realize that nothing anyone says about you has anything to do with who you actually are. Because who you are is not an opinion. It's the silence before every word. And silence, thank God, cannot be offended. Now, this doesn't mean you must let everyone trample through your garden while you sit smiling in eternal bliss. No, no. Love without intelligence becomes sentimentality, and peace without clarity becomes passivity. You see, protecting your energy isn't about building walls. It's about knowing where your garden ends and the wild forest begins. You can welcome visitors, but you needn't let them pitch a tent on your soul. Most people confuse kindness with compliance. They think to be spiritual is to say yes to everything, to be endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly exhausted. But even the sun sets, and even the ocean withdraws from the shore. Boundaries are not barriers. They are expressions of balance. When you say no, you're not rejecting the other. You're honoring the rhythm of your own being. Because if you give when you're empty, you offer not love, but resentment dressed as virtue. It's a funny thing. When you finally stop overextending yourself, you discover that life doesn't fall apart. It simply rearranges itself around your peace. And peace, unlike exhaustion, doesn't need to be earned. So, protect your energy not by closing the heart, but by staying rooted in yourself. Like a tree that bends with the wind but never forgets where it stands. When you no longer feel the need to defend an image, you find that silence begins to speak for you. It's not the silence of avoidance or repression. It's the silence that comes when there's simply nothing left to say. Most people imagine strength as volume, as assertion, as a firm voice that must be heard. But real strength often sounds like nothing at all, because truth doesn't argue, it just is. When someone throws anger at you, what happens if you don't throw it back? It falls to the ground like a stone that has lost its target. And in that quiet, something extraordinary occurs. Their fury begins to echo only in their own mind, while yours remains still, like a pond untouched by the wind. You see, silence is not a retreat. It's a refusal to participate in madness. It's not submission. It's sovereignty. It's saying without words, I will not be drafted into your war. When you stop reacting, the world reveals its true pace. Slow, rhythmic, almost musical. You find that you don't have to win arguments or prove points. You simply have to be still enough to hear life humming beneath the noise. And that hum, that quiet background of existence, is what people spend lifetimes chasing without realizing it has been humming through them all along. When you no longer rush to defend or explain, you begin to see something very curious about other people. They are mirrors, not obstacles. Every irritation, every insult, every criticism, it's life holding up a reflection of your own unfinished business. That's why certain remarks sting, while others pass like wind. The sting only finds what's already tender. So rather than blaming the messenger, look at what they've touched. You may find that the world isn't against you at all. It's simply showing you where you still hold resistance. The people who bother you the most are often your best teachers in disguise. They reveal the exact place where you're not yet free. And once you see this, you stop taking things so personally. The moment someone tries to provoke you, you almost want to thank them. Not because you enjoy the jab, but because they've helped you spot another knot you can now untie. That's the secret. People lose their power to bother you. The instant you realize they were never enemies, only mirrors polishing you back to clarity. And once you begin to see others as mirrors, something softer begins to unfold. You stop needing the reflection altogether. You no longer cling to the role of the one who must learn, or the one who must be calm, or even the one who must not be bothered, because all of those are still little masks, still the self trying to fix itself. Letting go isn't something you do. It's what happens when you stop holding on. Just as the hand releases a stone when it grows tired of grasping, the heart releases its burdens when it grows tired of pretending to control. You see, anger, resentment, and hurt, they're just the mind's way of saying, I haven't yet accepted what already is. But when you finally see the futility of resistance, when you stop demanding life to be polite, it becomes beautifully simple. People say what they say. The world moves as it moves. And you remain undisturbed, like the sky behind all weather. To let go is not to forget, nor to forgive in any official sense. It's to wake up and realize there's nothing to forgive because there was never anyone separate to offend. The play goes on, the actors shout their lines, and you, at last, can sit in the audience, smiling, knowing it was all theater from the beginning. And in that smile, you discover the secret you were chasing all along. Nothing and no one can bother you. When you've stopped mistaking the play for real life,